Hello friends, I welcome you all to this online session of BSc Part 3 Compulsory English. In the last session, we have already completed module number 1 Part A, that is interview skills. While discussing module number 1 Part A, before discussing module number 1 Part A, we discussed the syllabus and we come to know that the syllabus is divided into two parts. One is the communication skills and second is the reading comprehension skills, and every module is again divided into two parts. One is communication skills. A is a communication skill and part B is a communication skill. Only module number 4 is exception, where we have only the part of a reading comprehension skills. So as per the design, you can see module number 1A is communication skills and module number 1B is a reading comprehension skill. And in this module number 1B, we are supposed to read a poem by Nissim uh, Enterprise. As I told you, whenever we read a poem, whenever we read a short story, novel, or we read or watch a drama, you can see it becomes very necessary to understand who is the author, because author and his socio-cultural background, his family background, his education, all these things matters much. For example, even and this is not only true in case of English poetry, it is also true in the case of Hindi or Marathi poetry. If we are reading a Harivansh Rai Bachchan's Madhushala, we should understand his socio-cultural background and his attitude, his approach to look at the Madhushala. Or when we were thinking about Marathi poetry, नारायण सुर्वे, कधी फाटका आत आहे कधी फाटका बाहेर आहे, मी तळपती तलवार आहे मी कामगार आहे. We should understand Narayan Surve and his life as a Girni Kamgar. So this is what you can see, it becomes a very necessary part, it becomes very essential to understand who is the author, because author and his sociocultural background, his family background, his education contributes a lot, his attitude, his approach contributes a lot to the meaning making of the text, whether it is a poetry, whether it is a novel, whether it is a short story or a drama. It becomes very necessary to understand who is the author. And therefore, before starting understanding the poem, that is the enterprise, we will read or we will try to understand or try to get acquainted with Nissim as a poet. So let us begin this PPT and try to understand or try to get acquainted with Nissim. So this is a Nissim. Nissim is a Ben Israeli person, means he belongs to a Ben Israeli community of India. These Ben Israeli people were migrated in India for several centuries before. So let us read about this poet. So he is generally known, he is very well known among the critics, readers, appreciators as a father of a modern Indian English poetry. We will understand that why he is called as modern Indian English poetry. There are certain things or three major or the key words in this title, modern Indian English poetry. First is a modern, second is Indian, and third is an English, and he is called as a father of a modern Indian English poetry. So we will understand why we were calling him as a father. So let us read. Nissim is one of the prolific Indian writers in English of the 20th century. So he was born in 1924 in Mumbai and died in 2004 due to the Alzheimer disease at the age of, I think, 1979. So you can see he is a very prolific writer, Indian writers in English. Basically, he writes in English language, though as he is living in Mumbai, he speaks a Marathi language. So Nissim basically is a Marathi man. Though he is a Ben Israeli, he is speaking a Marathi. So this Nissim is a Marathi poet, sorry, Marathi man who writes in English. Instead of bilingual, he writes exclusively in English language. So you can see he was awarded the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1982 for his poetry collection latter days slums. So when we were thinking about this 1982 and Sahitya Akademi Award, you will understand that Sahitya Akademi Award is one of the most prestigious awards in literature. And when a person from India receives this award, it means he has gained a wide recognition among the people of India. And therefore, we may call him as one of the most popular poet of Indian soil. So he was also awarded the Padma Shri by the government of India in 1988. Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, all these are the highest civilian awards. So this Nissim musical is also awarded with the Padma Shri Puraskar by government of India. This is given by a central government of India. So his poetry has different themes and styles. Of course, yes, you can see when we think about the classical poetry, you can see there are limited themes, but in a modern period you can see there are several themes were explored in this tradition, in this poetic tradition. So his poetry are a depiction of his craftsmanship, restraint, and intellectual approach to everyday life. So we will read one, or we will I will screen one short video in the end of this lecture. You will understand that uh, with from this video you will understand a small poem by Goodbye Party for Pushpa TN. You will understand that how these modern Indian poets try to explore the themes which we never even imagine. So this is what, and the satirical narrative style and all these things become a very unique one that gives an identity to the literary tradition as a modern Indian English poet, and that's why he is called as a father of a modern Indian English poetry. So one of those Indian poets writing in English who creates an authentic flavor of India by their use of Indian English. This is also very important. Nissim musical. When he is writing a Nissim musical, he always write E is always small. He never writes E in a uppercase. Why? Because he reject the received British pronunciation. And when we think about his poetry, you can see that there are several grammatical mistakes, and these mistakes are deliberately it is not the case that he is not good in English, but he has deliberately left the grammatical errors to note or to insert an identity of a Creole that is called as an Indian English. So how, and his poetry, when we think about, we will read one. So in that poetry also you can see that he is using a colloquial Indian English language. Colloquial Indian English. Colloquial means बोली, बोली भाषा. जसं आपण मराठीमध्ये बोलतो, मराठी जी आपण मराठी बोलतो आणि जी मराठी लिहितो याच्यामध्ये फरक असतो. तर हे जे एसे म्युझिकल आहेत ते Indian colloquial variety of English he used in his poetry. So this is what, and therefore, so this is a, in fact, a effort, or this is in fact an attempt to gain a separate identity than mainstream English literature. So these people, these are the forefathers who started the canon, which is called as a Indian English literature, and they define this canon as an Indian English literature. They define the characteristics of these this literature. So this is therefore he is called as a father of India, modern Indian English poetry. Then Nissim writing style. See, it was the Ezekiel that modern English poetry took roots in India. So instead of using very high, complicated, complex, highly rhythmic narrative style, what he do? He uses a colloquial language. You can see his poetry is like a dialogue between the poet and the audience. So therefore he is called as a modern English poetry. He rejects the classical norms of a poetry, and instead of a classical norms, what he do, he adapts the colloquial language in the poetry. So he enriched the style and the content of Indian English poetry, enabling it to reflect the 20th century Indian reality. So this is a very important part, 20th century Indian reality. And to depict such a kind of contemporary reality, he also uses a style that suits to its content. And therefore, when we were reading Ezekiel, जर मराठी साहित्याच्या बाबतीमध्ये म्हणायचं झालं तर इफ यू रीड ए मंगेश पाडगावकर हिज स्टाईल इज डिफरंट वन अँड नारायण सुर्वे हिज स्टाईल इज different one. Mangesh Padgavkar's poetry, you can see, is a kind of that is also a kind of a dialogue. For example, हजार हाथ असते तर हजार हातांनी केला असता सलाम, सलाम मेरे भाइयों और बहनों सभी को सलाम, सलाम गल्लीतल्या दादाला सलाम, दादांच्या कुत्र्यांना सलाम, सलाम मेरे भाइयों और बहनों सभी को सलाम. This is not like a poetry that we read in a classical literary poetic tradition, but this is a totally new one. This is totally different one. This is like a dialogue with the audience, and therefore this is called as a modern and why he is using such a kind of colloquial Marathi, because he want to depict the day-to-day reality of his society, and therefore he is using this. Then, a group of contemporary Indian English poets follow the simple conversational style of Ezekiel. So, he not only used such a kind of style in his poetry, but he also becomes a point of inspiration for other poets, and they also start using such a kind of a colloquial language in their poetry. Then, as a poet writing about urban alienation, he expressed the angst of many uneducated middle class Indians. So, this is what you can see his concern. This is what his perspective to look towards the world. So, you can see his poems. These are the very famous poems of Nissim, and these poems were in fact prescribed to so many of the universities at national and international level. So see his poems, a very Indian poem in Indian English, then Enterprise that we are supposed to read. It is in fact a poetry collection, and we are supposed to read one poem from this poem. Then Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpa T.S. Sorry, all these are the poems, not the collections. Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpa T.S. Then Marriage, and there are the books. See, The Time to Change, The Discovery of India, The Unfinished Man. Then first published book, three plays, Nalini, a comedy in three acts, marriage poem, one act tragic comedy, These Sleepwalkers, an Indo-American farce. Why I am telling you all these things, you can understand how prolific he was, how he tried his hand in several of the literary genres. He is writing in one act tragicomedy, he is writing in Indo-American farce, he is writing a comedy in a three acts. So you can see he is a very prolific kind of a writer using several types of several genres of literature. Then essay on social criticism. He is also very famous for his essays. So see how normal is normality, 1972, tradition and all that case against the hippies, 1973, a quest of sanity and our academic community. This is 1968. So you can understand that all these are the essays on a social criticism, because all these essays address the social problems or social situations. Then essays on art and criticism. He is not only a creative writer, but he is also a critic, and therefore he has also contributed in a to the criticism. Modern art in India, 1970. How good is Sabawala, 1973. Painting of the year, 1973. And then volumes of poetry, you can see Time to Change, Discovery of India, The Unfinished Man in 1960. These are his famous poetry collections, volumes. So, he is basically a very Indian poem in Indian English. So, he uses Indian English to explore his poetry. His language is Indian language, Indian English language. He commits certain mistakes as these Indian people commit certain mistakes. He write poetry in that diction only, and therefore it is a essentially Indian English poem. So the poem, written in a very light vein, is an Indian poem because the poet looks at the world around him through the eyes of a typical middle class Indian, especially living in the urban center of India. So his concern is depicting the middle class who is living in the urban centers of India, and therefore he towards the world, look at the world from his eyes, and as a result of that, so his poetry explores his understanding, his concern, how he will speak, how he will behave, how he will react. All these things are depicted in these poems. So here the person is voicing his opinion to a visitor. For example, see, I am standing for a peace and non-violence. Why world is fighting? Why all people of world are not following Mahatma Gandhi? I am simply not understanding. Ancient Indian wisdom is 100% correct. I should say even 200% correct. But modern generation is neglecting too much, going for fashion and foreign thing. So you can say this is the Indian English. This is the Indian if and this is a very funny thing when a British people read this. This is a very funny. They never repeat. We generally see very thank you, very beautiful, very intelligent. That is incorrect English as per the British received English, or the British English. It is a wrong one, it is a mistake. So you can see, or they never use such kind of 100% correct, I should say even 200% correct. So this is what an Indian English, and this Ezekiel uses such a kind of language in his poem, and as a result of that, you can see his poetry becomes a unique one, and it creates, or it gives a identity to the Indian English poetry. So we will see one example of this poem, especially the goodbye party of Miss Pushpa TS. So we will watch one small video. See, this is the video.
Friends, our dear sister is departing for foreign in 2-3 days, and we are meeting today to wish her bon voyage. You are all knowing, friends, what sweetness is in Miss Pushpa. I don't mean only external sweetness, but internal sweetness. Miss Pushpa is smiling and smiling, even for no reason, but simply because she is feeling. Miss Pushpa is coming from a very high family. Her father was renowned advocate in Bulsa or Surat. I am not remembering now which place. Surat. Ah, yes. Once only I stayed in Surat with family members of my uncle's very old friend. His wife was cooking nicely. That was a long time ago. Coming back to Miss Pushpa, she is most popular lady, with men also and ladies also. Whenever I asked her to do anything, she was saying, just now only I will do it. That is showing good spirit. I am always appreciating the good spirit. Pushpa Miss is never saying no. Whatever I or anybody is asking, she is always saying yes. And today she is going to improve her prospect, and we are wishing her bon voyage. Now I ask other speakers to speak, and afterwards Miss Pushpa will do summing up.
So this is a poem by Ezekiel. You can understand the language used in it. You can understand the attitude explored in it, how a middle class person speak about his colleague. This is reflected in this poem, so you can understand this. I hope that you understand Ezekiel as a poet. In the next session, we will continue with actual poem that is prescribed to you for this syllabus. We will stop here and continue the same in the next session. Thank you.